Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 853B, and today's date is December 28th, 2015, and the title of this episode is Russia Reports Kiev is Planning a Major Offensive Against Donbass. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, Obama has stated many times that he is going to push gun legislation as hard as he possibly can before his term has ended as president. And we've seen many mass shootings. We know they're false flags. We've been pointing out all the inconsistencies, the anomalies, and the hoaxes. And we see that every time there is some type of mass shooting, they try to push new legislation. They have the Dianne Feinstein bill. They have other bills there. They have the UN Arms Treaty bill all ready to go. And now there's this new legislation, which was submitted December 16th of 2015 by Congressman David Cicilline of Rhode Island, which is H.R. 4269, the assault weapons ban of 2015, which basically right now has about 123 co-sponsors, and they're all Democrats. And I don't really care about Democrat, Republican. That makes no difference for me. If the government employees are working for the people and only the people, I'm satisfied with that. If they are working for a foreign government, if they're working for their own interests, if they're working in any other way except for the people, they have no business whatsoever taking that office. If they're accepting funds from corporations or any other groups, they have no business being in this office. Actually, I don't even believe they should have a salary. They shouldn't get benefits. This should be voluntary. They should be doing this for the good of the country because they want to see this country better. Actually, that's how it started. They turned it into a business. They turned it into long life careers. But we can see right now that they're pushing regulations as hard as they possibly can. And this one that they're pushing right now is to regulate assault weapons. And we see right now that this whole thing that they're trying to push, just like the other gun legislation, it's not going to have any traction to this. First of all, it's very poorly written. Second of all, it's basically banning any type of semi-automatic type of weapon, shotgun, pistols, assault weapons, you name it. And they have all different types of requirements. And the reason why they're putting this forth is to get everyone on board, and maybe it won't pass, maybe it will pass, which I don't think it will, but they just want everyone to see it, look at it, because you have to remember, right now, they're coming off of all these mass shootings. They're pushing legislation in, and they're going to try to move this legislation with more false flag events. And this is what they're going to try to do. Just like after the Sandy Hook hoax, they try to push the Dianne Feinstein bill. It didn't work. They tried to push the UN Arms Treaty. It didn't work. Now they're going to try to push these new pieces of legislation through. And the only way to get traction on this is to create some type of false flag to scare the people into doing something they wouldn't do. Now, we have to remember the Second Amendment, and this was put there on purpose, shall not be infringed upon, shall not be limited. And all of this is in violation of the Second Amendment. And there's a reason why the First and Second Amendment are 1 and 2. It's not for hunting. It's not for sport. It's to back up the First Amendment. So why is Obama trying so hard right now and focusing on gun legislation? Well, because they know the economy's falling apart. They realize they're going to have those people who do not agree with the government, those people who question the government, and those people who feel like maybe we should remove the government officials from their position. This is what they're worried about. This is why they have increased security on all government buildings. This is why they put spikes on top of the White House fence. This is why they're taking precautions. This is why they're making lists. And we can see right now that the Assistant Attorney General, John Carlin, would eliminate the Bill of Rights if he had the opportunity. He's saying that domestic terror groups pose a greater threat to America than the Islamic State or Al Qaeda. And to help combat them, the department has created a new council that will coordinate the investigation and prosecution of anti-government and hate groups. He says that they're creating this new domestic terrorism council because of all the violent attacks or plots against the U.S., and they'll be looking for those people that have anti-government views, who are racist, or would like to create anarchy in the country. Now, of course, what we can see right now is they're creating a special force to go after those people who don't agree with the government, and they will be spying on those people, creating lists of those people, and removing those people, even if they didn't do anything wrong. You can see already the direction we are headed in. It kind of looks like this group that they're creating sounds like the SS in Germany. I mean, think about what he's saying right now. In a country that has the freedom of speech, the freedom of press, the freedom to assemble, the freedom to basically talk about the government, not to agree with the government. I mean, what they are doing right now is they're bringing this to the next level. And this kind of fits into the NDAA, where the president can point his finger at those people who he believes might be a threat to this country. And of course can throw them in prison without any type of trial or anything like that. And we are heading down that path. Now, we can see at this point that out in Ukraine, things are starting to really ramp up. And Russia is saying they would like to extend the Minsk ceasefire agreement into 2016. They're going to do whatever they possibly can to talk to Kiev, to Germany, to France, to see if they can have this extended. Because right now they didn't meet the requirements of the Minsk agreement, and they believe they should be extended into 2016 so they can finish it up. But I don't believe Kiev has any notion of actually following through on the Minsk II ceasefire agreement. Because right now, Poroshenko, he's approved a plan for foreign troops to join drills in Ukraine. So exercises in 2016, there's going to be foreign troops in Ukraine participating in multinational exercises. And we also see that Russia is saying that Ukraine is preparing for a major offensive in Donbass. And this is coming from Sergei Lavrov saying this: what we are seeing right now is they are moving military assets up to the contact line. And at this point, it seems from all reports that Kiev is preparing and getting ready for a major offensive. And he added that the European Union was aware of these plans. And he's saying this will completely destabilize everything in that region. And he's absolutely right. He also says that Europeans continually contradict themselves. When they speak to him privately, they talk about peace, working it out with Russia. When they're not talking to Russia, they're talking about Russian aggression, war. He says so they're speaking out of two sides of their mouths right now. And we see this a lot coming out of the private Western Central Bank countries. Now, out in Libya, the Libyan unified government is going to ask the UN Security Council to lift restrictions concerning access to adequate weaponry, because this UN security restriction was imposed on the country, and they want that lifted. And they're saying that they would like to train their armed forces, bring in more weapons. And we can see that some Western countries, they are preparing for an active military engagement in Libya, despite everyone denying it. There's evidence, proof that they are preparing, making plans for this. We already know that France has already flown reconnaissance missions over Libya. We already realize that they've been moving certain assets to this area. The UK is all ready to bring in about 1,000 troops plus some special op groups. So this whole thing is in full speed ahead motion right now. And coming into 2016, we will see this occur. We see Iraqi military forces have basically liberated Ramadi, and they're saying there's small pockets here and there of the Islamic State, but they made a huge push and they liberated a lot of that area. The U.S. is saying, well, we really can't confirm that because, as we know in the past, the U.S. was trying to hamper the Iraqi military from basically removing the Islamic State, because remember, the Islamic State is the proxy army for the United States government central bankers. We see there is a Syrian journalist and filmmaker who is exposing the Islamic State and all their atrocities and their link to Turkey and the United States, was assassinated in Turkey in broad daylight with a shot to the head. I mean, they're trying to remove all of these people that are trying to report on the connection between the Islamic State to Turkey, to the United States, and other coalition countries. NATO right now, they're going to be deploying E-3 Sentry AWAC aircraft from Germany to Turkey, and they're going to be monitoring the airspace around that area, which should tell everyone something. That the United States government central bankers, Turkey, and the coalition forces, they are planning something. Erdogan says, listen, we're not removing our Turkish troops from Iraq after all. He says they will remain there. And we reported on this that, yes, they were not removing any of the troops, and we are getting proof that they are not removing them whatsoever. Now, of course, this is an invasion because the Iraqi government, which is a sovereign government, saying, okay, we don't want your troops in our country. You need to get out. And before you know it, there will be fighting between Iraq and Turkey. In Turkey, the U.S. Embassy is urging Americans to avoid the entire area because of anti-war protests. They're saying something is going to go down, and they're warning everyone for Tuesday, December 29th. And they're saying we urge American citizens to avoid the area around those times. Of course, they don't want anyone filming that area, that people are against the government, people are against Turkey going into Syria, people are against everything that the government is doing there. That government is completely corrupt, just like all the other private Western central bank countries. The Syrian army has dropped leaflets saying surrender now to those militants that are in Damascus, saying, listen, you have no place to go. You might as well surrender at this point. And we understand there is peace talks between the United States, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, and the rest of the coalition forces. Included in that is Russia and Syria. And we know that Russia is pushing for a list of who is a terrorist, who is a moderate rebel. And of course, the U.S. has not produced anything whatsoever of this. And right now, Qatar is saying, well, we completely oppose the creation of lists of oppositions, of terrorist groups. And they're against classifying which group is which. Well, of course they are, because all these terrorist groups are controlled by Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, the United States, Israel, and the other coalition forces. But Russia is saying, well, how do we know who are the moderate rebels? How do we know who the terrorists are? We need to start separating them. And of course, they don't want this to happen. Now, the Obama administration is looking for all different types of narratives to use on what is going on in Syria. because right now they're losing the propaganda war. They're trying to convince everyone that this was going to take forever to get rid of the Islamic State. We can't stop them from stealing the oil from Syria and Iraq. It's just completely impossible until Russia stepped in and started to destroy all their oil tankers, pushing the Islamic State back. And their whole story completely fell apart. And now they're looking for a new narrative. And the only way the U.S. is going to reclaim some shred of lost credibility is to simply stop trying to overthrow Assad, but they can't do that. I know they continually say this is what they're going to do, but talk is cheap. We need to look at their actions, and their actions are speaking volumes of what they're about to do. They're about to go into Libya. They're about to go into Syria using a different tactic. They're about to create a false flag event to scare the American people and the Europeans into doing something they would normally not do. And this is coming in 2016. They're pushing it as hard as they possibly can. They're getting ready for an offensive in Ukraine. They're getting ready for an offensive in Syria. They're getting ready for an offensive in Libya. And they're trying to build one up in the South Pacific. We are headed into war. They're trying to light the fuse and get that big boom. This is their whole entire plan, because this entire economy is collapsing in front of us. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.